On this edition of New Amsterdam Radio, we're talking about stale. What does it mean to be stale? What it is when your project is stale, and what you're going to do to avoid it. On this edition of New Amsterdam Radio, let's go. Yo, Flobo Boyce here. You're listening to New Amsterdam Radio, powered by Knew Amsterdam, the brand that's made for creatives just like yourself. And of course, you can check it out. All of the offerings New Amsterdam at knewamsterdam.com. That's Knew Amsterdam.com. How is everyone doing? If you're like me, you're knee deep in the holiday season. We're getting closer to Christmas. Hanukkah was just a couple of weeks ago, and Kwanzaa and New Year's and all that. It's always fun. A fun time of year for me. I'm not quite into the holidays specifically, but I grew up on the East Coast where the feelings of drinking warm beverages against a cold night and trying to make your way up the driveway without slipping on a patch of ice is pretty much part of my upbringing. So I always have fond memories to that. And New Year's Day is my favorite holiday of the year, so I'm excited to counter that. But in the meantime, Christmas trees are out, pine-smelling air fresheners are on our fake tree in our apartment in Los Angeles, because you have to have a tree with the pine scent, right? You just can't have it to be full plastic. You know, I think of myself as a creative person, and if you're someone who's listening in to New Amsterdam Radio, you probably are too. And we talked about ways to create and find the right audience for your thing. But let's take it a step further, because I know each and every single one of you are going to be fortunate enough to have your creation loved, respected, and admired for many, many years to come. Doesn't matter if you are in the performing arts, doesn't matter if you are a fine artist, if you're a creative person and you have an audience and you're steadily creating content or creating something that moves you, there's going to be a bit of, well, what next? What next, kid? And if you're someone who likes to innovate, you probably are thinking that to yourself. But what if the clock that we give ourselves, the notion we tell ourselves it's time to try something new is a bit slower than what our audience says? What if we think that our creations are pretty much on the cutting edge of the movement, but our audience is saying otherwise? Maybe, and I'm personally a stand-up comedian, so my experiences usually have that lens. Maybe I have an act, it's done very well for me. I still think it kills, and by kills I mean it does well with audiences, but then more and more my audience is saying, instead of guffaw, what if other comics pull me aside and go, hey, your material was great, but I've heard it before. Or, I love your fashion label. It was very street, but we've moved on. Now we're doing athleisure, you know? We make fun of it now because it was a product of the times, but I've seen so many memes that were featuring Jenko pants, JNCO. They were a very stylized pair of trousers, usually denim, that were very, very large, and they were all the rage when I was a kid growing up in the 90s. But they kind of became a butt of the jokes because you don't really see Jenkos that much around today, even though the brand is being relaunched. And what does that mean when a brand is being relaunched? And that's usually a committee or a person or a movement says, hey, this brand, in this case Jenko, has value. Let's introduce that again with a new interpretation of that brand to the audience. But what about us? What about the creators? What about those who are filmmakers and people who have kind of put us in the box, or actors who are typecasted because the first couple of roles are very, very similar and we are typecasting ourselves? There's nothing wrong with branching out. In fact, branching out is what makes us creative. We broke outside the box of what's considered a normal pursuit and we're doing what we're doing. But on the creative level, what do you do when you're stale? Well, the first thing you could probably do, and it's always research, right? I always start, I don't mean Googling, but it could also mean Googling, right? Finding out what's hot and what's trends, and what's going on inside of your pursuit. Now, you run the risk of becoming a a Mr. Johnny Come Lately trying to follow a movement. You never want to chase cool, right? You always want to have cool become organic. But if you are creating t-shirts and all your t-shirts are white writing on black, for example, and you've heard that gray has been one of the most sought after colors for t-shirts, that may inform the design. You don't have to go, well, let's just do all my designs in gray, but you can say, well, if that is a color that people are pursuing, what can be my interpretation, my spin, my color palette on this thing? So you see, that's like taking a trend and still making it yours. If you're a comedian and everyone is loving political jokes, and you're not a political comic, you can opt out, obviously, but you can say, what would be a political joke that I, as an artist, as a creator of jokes, would like and appreciate and be satisfied, but what would also satisfy the needs. We see that now with late night talk, and I'm getting off subject here, but my favorite late night talk show is The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, and of the late night talk shows, Jimmy dances around politics the most. He doesn't go as direct with his political commentary as his contemporaries, and some can say his ratings have suffered for it, but it would be kind of out of sorts. It'd be off-brand if Jimmy came out and go, all right, guys, welcome to The Tonight Show. Let's fight the power, right? His political commentary is more juvenile because it fits that nature of the show. It's not compromising the show for the sake of what the trend is, but it's definitely acknowledging that there is a demand for things that was not being offered, right? If you are someone who loves making knit bags from scratch and you have a certain kind of aesthetic, like let's say you studied abroad and you take inspiration from African and Asian cultures with these bags, and your craftsmanship is out of this world, but then someone tells you, hey, this is great, but I really want a bag for my favorite sports team. To opt in and to make a sports team bag, assuming you have the license to do so, right, does not undermine the craftsmanship of the bags themselves. It's just you taking what you're good at and pivoting to your audience. The other thing I can always recommend is anticipate. Anticipate that your audience will want something new, will want something different. They will want some sort of evolution of your work. This happens a lot in music. One of the greatest examples with this is with pop star Madonna. Her eras and her music are very, very distinct. I'm not even a Madonna fan like that, so I can't tell you all of the eras, but I do DJ weddings sometimes, and when I play Madonna's things from the 80s, right, Lucky Star or Spanish Lullaby, it has a whole different vibe to her music era, which has a whole different vibe to her MDNA era, and which was quickly jettisoned for the Rebel Heart era, right? There's different, yes, you will definitely sound different because technology is different, production's different, but the messages in the music and the overall vibe and the feeling the audience gets has evolved over time. We also see this with automobiles. It doesn't really matter the brand. I like to use Toyota's Camry because that's kind of like the stock American car. No, take that back. The stock sedan. It is an American, it's a Japanese company. But they operate on the 5-year cycle, give or take. They come out with a new design. The second year, it's unchanged. The third year, there's usually a changing of the lights. The fourth year, they add some more trim options and packages. And by the fifth year, they're ready for a whole new design. And my dad, when I was growing up, the Camry was like his car. He had an 87 Camry, a 99, a 2003, 2007, 2012, and all of them looked different based on that era. But definitely there was a bit of understanding that there's only so many years you can rearrange the lights. There's only so many years you can add leather trim until you decide to animate or reinvigorate your perception of it. So cars do that. Fashion does that multiple times a year. What's your fall collection? And your fall collection will have to differ between the collection before and after, and also has to differ year to year. So your fall 2019 can't be the same as your fall 2020, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So once we have the research down and once we plan for trying to find something new, trying to find that next evolution, you can fight off the stale bug, which it sounds like a cool mascot to have, but you can fight off the main components of people saying, yeah, I've seen it, or yeah, what else I got? What else you got? I want to thank you all for checking out this edition of Knew Amsterdam Radio. Tell a friend about the show. It's available wherever you get your podcasts or wherever you get your fine podcasts, of course. My name is Flobo Boyce. You can follow me over at flobito.com. That's FLOBITO.com. That's also the same for Instagram. I'm at Flobito. And on Twitter, at Flobo Boyce. That's FLOBOBOYCE. Knew Amsterdam Radio is powered by Knew Amsterdam, a brand that's creative with creatives in mind. Check out the full line of products over at knewamsterdam.com with a K. Tell a friend about the show. There's more and more episodes coming down the pipe, and we're going to have some crazy discussions, and I want you guys to be a part of it. So share the show, tell your friends about it, and until next time, the city is yours.